Yo, what's up, everybody? My name is Jeremy Schumacher. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. There are so many places you could be on the internet. Thanks for swinging by and hanging out with me. I just this very weekend saw Friendship, the film written and directed by Andrew DeYoung, starring Tim Robinson and Paul Rudd. It was really good. Is the short spoiler-free review. Go see it. It just came out. Look at me. I'm on top of stuff and doing something that's somewhat culturally relevant. Yeah, it was really good. I think I can do some spoiler-free stuff. It's awkward. It's some of that cringe humor, but I also think some really smart and clever humor. It's not pure cringe the whole time. So, yeah, if you like Tim Robinson's humor, you will like this film. And if you're not a fan, probably don't go see this movie. I saw it at a historic theater here in Milwaukee, and there were some boisterous laughers in the crowd, and that made for a good time because a lot of different people were laughing at a lot of different parts of the movie. So I think it's got some very obvious humor. It's got some very subtle humor. It's got some very cringy, awkward humor. It's funny and dark. It's not like a feel-good film. So, end of spoiler-free review, so I can get into the bits I want to talk about related to mental health. The movie centers around Craig Waterman, played by Tim Robinson, who has a crush on a new neighbor who moves to town named Austin. It's played by Paul Rudd. Craig gets Austin's mail and gives it to him, and then they hang out like a few times, and Craig becomes enamored with him. And other things in Craig's life are falling apart, but Austin seems cool, and they keep hanging out. And then Craig is too awkward to keep hanging out with, so Austin dumps him, and Craig does not take it well, is the rest of the film. And yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff going on in this film that I thought was very funny, very awkward. Some of it's really good, true to real life relationship stuff, and some of it isn't. Craig's wife is recovering from cancer. She is cancer free, but still very nervous about the cancer coming back. Craig seems blissfully ignorant of her concerns and is just in like cheerleader mode of you're good, you beat cancer, it's not coming back, huzzah. He seems very disconnected from his wife. She's also having an affair just as the movie begins. So it's not really something we see the arc of. Like, she's out. She's got 1 3/4 feet out the door. She keeps bringing up her ex-boyfriend, Devin, who she's like hanging out with and getting dinner with and doing all these things with instead of hanging out with Craig. So she's sort of a sympathetic character, but also the marriage therapist in me is like, nah, she's doing this in an unethical way before the movie begins. And Craig seems like not a great partner. So, but like, then talk about that, right? Confront your stuff. If you want to have an open relationship, if you want to split up, if you want to work on your shit, whatever you're going to land on, let's talk about it, have conversation, and come to some sort of mutual plan of action. Or like not mutual plan of action, but at least a clear set of expectations of, this is over. I don't want to work on it. Peace. I'm going to go live in my rich boyfriend's pool house, which is what she does. I don't know. I didn't necessarily find her to be a likable or sympathetic character. The movie is driven by Tim Robinson being awkward and Paul Rudd being likable. Yeah, I think that's what the movie is driven by. Craig crushes on Austin, and like Austin is a band, and they're not particularly great, but Craig thinks they're awesome. Austin is a weatherman, and Craig gets super into that. Austin shares some of his hobbies with Craig, like mushrooming and collecting old artifacts, and Craig gets super into them. It's the point of like getting sick at the mall because he's eating raw mushrooms without knowing anything. So again, it's like infatuation. He gets super into everything Austin is doing, but he doesn't have any of his own expertise, and he's not really interested in putting the work in to learn about these things. They don't become his hobbies. He just likes them because Austin likes them, and he likes Austin. Therefore, he likes this thing, which leads to a whole bunch of issues. Yes, the mushroom thing. He and his wife go exploring in the aqueducts that Austin shows him to and get lost, a pivotal point in the movie. And so again, like, I think, my issue with the movie is that Craig is very much coded autistic, and it doesn't come out that he's autistic. But he's socially awkward. He does not pick up on the cues. He seems to have some hyper focuses of his own. He's got some sensory stuff around the clothes that he wears and how they feel on him. And like, yeah, he's just hyper fixated on that stuff. So like he's coded autistic. And then later in the movie, when his wife is breaking up with him, she's like, my mom never left my narcissistic father. I'm not going to do that. And I really don't feel like Craig was narcissistic. I think Craig was autistic. So I don't know. There's like some weird ableism going on, I guess, is my like main critique of the movie, that if you make a character so overtly autism coded and then you break up with him because he's like the weird awkward guy, like, I don't know, that seems ableist in the sense of like, you're breaking up with him for something that's not in his control. Why'd you get together with him in the first place? And I'm not blaming her for leaving. Again, Craig's a shit partner. Like, I'm not dismissing that. He wouldn't be somebody that would be fun to be in a relationship with. So the film like then hits some of its like romance, bromance plot points, but subverts them. So again, like that's where a lot of the humor comes from. And again, I think the movie is well done. Narcissism is one of those topics that, gosh, I get like an AI generated email from publicists every week about some narcissist specialist coming on my podcast. And I don't have any of them on because they don't seem to be scientifically rigorous or valid at all. Narcissism is like the cultural zeitgeist of like, that person's selfish, they must be a narcissist. Like, nah, we're all selfish. We all get in our own heads about shit. We all lose focus of the people we care about most because we're worried about some extraneous bullshit. And both partners do this in the film, right? So, we see Austin doing it. He's not called a narcissist. We see the wife doing it. I want to say, shoot, I forget what her name is. I don't have the link up anymore. Not because I'm misogynistic against women, but because I am really bad about remembering the names of characters in shows. I don't know that her name comes up very often in the movie. So it's going to bother me. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. And definitely with like a health crisis. So she had cancer, and I see this. I work with couples who come in with this stuff of chronic health issues or like big scary health issues popping up, and the couples sort of split, not break up because of it, but they part. Their connection around the topic is really hard because experiencing the health issue personally is very different than experiencing it for your partner. And to shift and ebb and flow from like one experience to the other requires a good degree of communication. And a lot of couples don't have that communication hammered out before a health crisis hits in their life. So, they're going to this like survivors group together in the movie, and they're just talking past each other. You can see it in the group. And you can see Craig's awkward, socially anxious as well. And so I could see where somebody who doesn't know what narcissism means would say this person's narcissistic. And maybe that's the commentary in the film. Maybe it's not a fair critique of the film. Maybe the film is saying this is how pop culture uses narcissism, even though he's not a narcissistic character. He's self-involved. And he like cares deeply for her. He is concerned about her. He just cannot articulate that. And he does a really poor job of showing it in a way that is meaningful to her. He keeps trying to show it in a way that's meaningful to him. And again, I think as somebody who's autistic myself and ADHD and I've not always been the easiest partner to be partnered with. Like there's pieces of his story that are sympathetic too, of like, he's trying, he's just bad at it. And like, I don't think you have to stay with a partner who's trying but is bad at it. Like, I'm not saying, again, I'm not a fan of compulsory monogamy. Like, we as mammals are not inherently monogamous. So that social norm of like till death do us part or it's a failure is a bad setup. So again, I don't really view this as like blaming her for leaving him. I just think the reasons she leaves him as laid out in the movie were poorly done. He's a bad partner. He doesn't need to be a narcissist for it. And again, some of this is my personal bias. It's a soapbox for me to have personality disorders thrown out when like trauma is a much better explanation. Somebody who's beat cancer probably has trauma. Their partner probably has trauma from being worried that they're going to die. So again, I'm just not a big fan of personality disorders. I think trauma is always a better explanation. I could see both these characters having trauma. My guess is Craig the character has always been awkward and weird and had a hard time fitting in. And so probably some like little T trauma there, not PTSD trauma necessarily. Big T trauma I refer to as like PTSD, going to war, getting blown up, being mugged, life or death situation, real bad car accident, health scare, etc. Anytime we're sort of faced with our own mortality, our brain could potentially respond with a trauma response, which, we understand perhaps uncompletely, but summarize as fight, flight, freeze, or fawn are the four main ways that we see humans respond to trauma. Most mammals respond to trauma that way. And what happens then with the trauma response is our brain gets stuck there. So we have this response that is designed for survival, and then we have contexts that do not require survival, but our brain does the trauma response anyway, and that gets messy, and sometimes it is deeply problematic. So I think trauma is probably the better explanation for both of them. They have a kid together, and like Craig, the dad, seems like unaware of a lot of his wife and his son's relationship, and they're weird, right? Like they kiss on the lips and they do some other stuff, and like there's some humor around that, right? Like it's written in the movie to be funny, but it's like, yeah, he's there's a pattern here of like he's been unaware of stuff for a while, and I don't think he's a narcissist. I think he's just probably autistic. And again, I work with people who are late stage diagnosed on the spectrum and with ADHD and other neurodivergence. Like sometimes they're hard to be partners with. Sometimes, sometimes they're hard to be partners with, and they can learn to be better. And having a proper diagnosis can be helpful, not necessarily to medicate the problem away, but like when your brain is wired a certain way, it's helpful to know why it's doing what it's doing. And then we can name it to tame it. We can work on it because we know what it is that we're working on, instead of just trying to chase down symptoms and treat symptoms without getting to the root issue. And again, for autism spectrum disorder and for ADHD, there is no cure. We're managing symptoms, we're creating resources, we're having accessibility for things. We're really just building up the support so that the diversity in how brains are wired is allowable, which in modern society really isn't. And I'm skeptical of neurotypical brains existing at all. I don't think there is a typical way, but society is definitely geared towards a certain level of productivity, and some brains are not wired for that. So anyway, that's my main critique of the movie, was just like, and right, like mostly characters who are autism coded, they don't overtly say that they have autism. Um, and the movies where someone does come out and say I have autism or I'm on the spectrum aren't done real well. I know like Love on the Spectrum exists, and I know there's a few other movies or a few other shows that maybe in the past couple of years have done a better job of this, but obviously, yes, in a like major Hollywood production, still done poorly. Peacemaker season 2 is about to come out, and Vigilante is Peacemaker's sidekick. It's a whole separate topic here. Who's very autistic coded, and like again, James Gunn did Guardians of the Galaxy, and so we had Drax who's autistic coded, and James Gunn has a kid who's autistic. So like I don't think it's on accident, and yet falls into some of the same stuff. So, and this is what I work with, right? This is one of my areas of expertise, quote unquote. It's a thing that I'm specifically knowledgeable about because I work with it a lot, and I have a broad experience in working with various different folks from different walks of life with it. And so I just see it it's very apparent to me. And I also see the pop culture stuff get it wrong consistently. So that was kind of downer in the movie. That otherwise, again, like I really enjoyed. I thought the movie was very funny. I laughed out loud a lot. Again, a guy a few rows behind us was laughing out very loudly, very regularly, which made it very funny as well. There's a lot of the cringe humor, if you the British Office, the American Office, fine, if you must. There's some of that stuff because Craig is so awkward, but there's a lot of like just well written gags and punchlines and stuff too. So I think that's very funny and well done. And again, we see this is another spoiler here. Not that we've not been doing spoilers for a while now. Uh, Austin is bald, and so at one point his wig falls off, which is a very funny gag. And then again, we see like Craig cares deeply for him. He knows that this wig matters to him, and so he like helps him. And it happens more than once throughout the film that like Craig is like, I got you, bro. Your secret's safe with me. You can trust me. And like in high stress situations and in situations where there's a lot of other things going on, he's gonna protect Austin and his wig because like he cares. And does that mean he's a good friend? No. Does it mean he's a narcissist? Also no. Like he cares about people. He just doesn't know how to show it in any sort of reciprocal way. He's bad at this stuff. He's probably bad at relationships. It seems like his relationship with his son is okay, but also like in the way that teens are hard to get along with all the time. Like that one's probably the least awkward of the relationships, but his son seems to enjoy hanging out with him, or is at least open to it in a way that some teens would not be. So, I don't know. It's weird. It's a very funny film, and I really enjoyed it. It's weird that the main takeaway for me for mental health was like not great. It doesn't have a lot of good things to say about men having friends. Some of that, the gags of like, this is awkward because like the dudes are being emotionally vulnerable. And like, again, I think that's subversive in a way. I think the movie did a nice job of being like, this is possible. Why don't men do it? Like, men could get together and share beers in the garage and sing a song together and like support each other. And it was like weird. um, so yeah, I don't know. Like I'm deeply skeptical of the narrative around like the male epidemic of loneliness. Like people are lonely. There's a connection epidemic. It's not male specific. It's something that I think the patriarchy, the male driven um, owners of social media and the mass media outlets are pushing this idea that men are suffering because they're not. And it makes a false equivalency then of loneliness for men is equivalent to what marginalized communities are experiencing. So, but there is certainly some commentary that's valid around the fact that men socializing has all these weird social norms around it that makes it really difficult to navigate. And then on top of it, if you're somebody who is socially awkward or is missing some of those social cues, certainly then navigating the weird social norms that exist that aren't based on anything is going to be even harder. And I think that's what Craig really struggles with is these men who he's not friends with, but he wants to be friends with, are socially transgressive to the norms. And it's very appealing to him, but he doesn't know how to make it work. So when he tries to do things that he saw them do that went well for them, he really makes it awkward and uncomfortable for comedic reasons within the movie. But I can see where that would happen elsewhere. Craig also works for like this horrific company that makes apps addictive, and that's subtle, but in the film, like a point that like part of his misery is probably that. He then goes on to like be a parking meter enforcer, which also makes people really dislike him. Craig does not have enough stress relief, and again, part of that is a lack of community. So not having good friendships, not having like connection. Yeah, I get all that. I think that commentary is there. I think at one point in the movie and in the trailer, like it said, this is why men shouldn't have friends. And like that's the wrong takeaway. Men should have friends. Men should have diverse communities that they're parts of. And that would be really helpful for men. A lot of men are they don't have personality disorders. They're not narcissists. They just were never shown in any way, shape, or form modeled healthy emotions, let alone have the intelligence, the emotional intelligence to be able to like integrate that into their personal relationships. So there's a real lack of skill for a lot of men around emotions. There's a real lack of experience for men. So, a lot of guys that I'm working with, whether they're on the spectrum or not, we're starting with some basics like the emotions wheel, which starts with some like basic primary emotions that people probably have felt or been able to identify, and then adds context to them and adds some depth to them. And I think that's really helpful and important for people. A lot of what men that I work with are struggling with their emotions. It's not they lack emotional intelligence, they lack emotional experience. And so gaining the awareness to be able to say, oh, that's this. I'm not angry, I'm disappointed. And those are different things. Might sound simple or obvious, but it can be quite profound. And so I think, there's a mix of obviously social, emotional intelligence and then like the experiential piece. But the experience piece can be gained, and then the skill set can be learned, and how to respond and how to communicate around that. So it's not insurmountable by any stretch of the imagination. It's something that can really get better, which is where I sort of get frustrated with like the narcissist thing or like a personality disorder, which are supposed to be like chronic, untreatable things. When it's like, no, there's a skill that can be learned here. There's an awareness that can be practiced and gained here, and like progress can be made. It's not unwieldy. I won't say it's easy or simple. It's highly complex, and awareness is a really hard thing to. One of the things I say in therapy a lot is like, I can't give you the awareness, but spoiler alert, by talking about it in therapy, we're gaining the awareness, right? Like your brain is really good at looking for patterns, and that's how your brain is wired, is to identify patterns. And so if we identify a new pattern for your brain to identify, it's going to start seeing it more and more. Which is why when culturally it's like, hey, everyone's gaslighting you and they're narcissists, your brain keeps looking for that pattern, even though that's not what those words mean. You amateur pop psych nonsense media makers. Ugh. The film did not use the word gaslighting, thankfully, because I really would have hated that. No, it's a really funny film. My rating's not important, but I would have said like 4 out of 5 stars. It was very funny. When it lands on streaming eventually, I'm sure I'll catch it again, either with new people who haven't seen it yet, or just because Tim Robinson's very funny to watch. The other thing that was really good, he licks a toad. If you want to do psychedelics, you want to go on a trip, these powerful medicines, or drugs, depending on your preferred nomenclature, can be made synthetically. We don't need to stress toads out to get their psychedelic secretions. Stop licking toads and don't eat mushrooms that you don't know are safe. But anyway, he licks a toad in the film for comedic effect. And his trip is he goes to Subway and he orders a sandwich. And it's very funny that that's his trip, and he's like deeply disappointed in it. And I liked that because, again, I think as much as I, as a therapist, as a mental health professional, who's somebody who's reading a lot of the research around psychedelics, who's done trainings around psychedelics, am excited about the potential possibility of psychedelics and helping and healing for folks. There is some like magical thinking with it that like it will cure everything and work well for everyone, and it simply won't. And so I thought the movie was very on point for like poking some fun at that, like ayahuasca changes everyone's lives and psychedelics are great for you no matter what. Like they can be really helpful in certain situations. They be harmful in certain situations, and people use them for scammy reasons or for shitty reasons to do harm themselves. And so like, yeah, I thought that was really funny. But the trip sequence was very funny because it wasn't like the movie trope of like everything's all wavy and groovy and psychedelic. Like, no, he really just went to a Subway and ordered a sandwich from a much older Austin character that he didn't recognize as Austin. So like, it's possible he was just dreaming, I guess, and didn't actually get high at all, is sort of how I took it, which also is interesting. And we require a lot more research on this. This is anecdotal, not research based. Bright asterisks around what I'm about to say. But anecdotally, neurodivergent people on the spectrum with ADHD, different things, might be a little quirky around psychedelics as well. So, and again, I don't think that's unique to neurodivergent folks. I think, again, this is a field we are trying to study more and learn about. The way that the medical field acts like medicine is an exact science is false. It's not. And so I think if psychedelics are going to have a role in healing and medicine, again, they will not be exact sciences. Different bodies will respond to them differently. But again, the film, in a very funny way, poked fun at sort of this idea of like psychedelics work and are healing for everyone all the time, when that's not true. That was very funny. Again, like the film has some really obvious gags, and the film, Paul Rudd losing his wig, but the film also has some like really good subtle humor and also some very funny lines. And then Tim Robinson's very funny with his delivery. So again, as fans of his, I think you should leave. The many skits that get shared on social media over and over again. Very funny guy. His delivery is very unique. Movie was very good. Strong recommend. All right, y'all. I'm peacing out. If there's anything you want me to review or want to hear me talk about, drop down in the comments. Likes and subscribes are appreciated. Take care of yourself. Take care of somebody else. Peace.